There's an uprising in Rome, and it's got nothing to do with Italy failing to qualify for the World Cup. Hi Argento fans, so I have finally gotten around to reviewing the third and final film in the Three Mothers trilogy. Out of all the films on what I would call the back nine of the Argento golf course, this is the only one that I had previously seen. When I reviewed Suspiria and Inferno, I was tempted to break up the order a little bit and review Mother of Tears whilst I was on those other two films. I decided not to do that in the end, but I did at least watch Mother of Tears off camera because I couldn't resist seeing how the trilogy ended. And I'm glad I did that, because when the dark times came in this review series and I wasn't enjoying films like The Stendhal Syndrome and Trauma, I always knew that at least I had this one more sort of good film to come, because this film's all right. It's not as good as the first two, obviously, but it's still a pretty decent stab at ending the trilogy. It does feel very, very different from the first two, being made as it was 27 years after Inferno was made. But this film's different in a lot of ways that it didn't need to be different. I think Argento actually intended to make it straight after Inferno, by the way, but because reception to that film wasn't great, box office not great, he had to sort of put it on the back burner. I don't know how that situation suddenly changed in 2007. Possibly over time, Suspiria just became a cult film, and I don't know, Argento eventually did get the green light. It just took a long, long time. But yeah, this film has a massively different feel. It's not set back in the 80s when Inferno was set. He could have done that. I mean, one of the Argento films that came out not long before Mother of Tears, Sleepless, that did have a very 70s vibe. It did feel like an attempt to go back to early Argento, but then he did a more contemporary giallo with The Card Player. And then we get to this film, which is absolutely, for me, a 2007 film. The witch in this one is different as well, which a lot of that could just be the fact that, it's the final film, we've got to make this witch bigger and badder than ever, but different in many ways from the witches from the first two. So in Suspiria, the witch ran a ballet school, was quite happy to just live in secrecy. Yeah, she killed somebody now and again, but she didn't have any designs on a Putin level scale. Similar with the witch from Inferno, quite happy to just live in her apartment block and only really kill anybody if they come along and pester her. That's how it feels like when you watch that film anyway. Cut to the witch in this film, and a little bit different. So at the start of this, she's not got her powers. She's a little bit like Voldemort in Harry Potter, in that she's waiting for a chance to rise up again, which happens in the very first scene when a priest accidentally takes the wrong urn out of a grave, and suddenly this mother, I can't remember the longer version of this witch's name, but it gives her a chance to come back to power. But she's not content just to live in secrecy like the witches from the first two films. She immediately sets out on this apocalyptic venture to get everybody in Rome sort of having a go at each other and killing each other and doing weird stuff like throwing babies off bridges. Reminds me of Ghostbusters 2, and all the people in New York just suddenly start being really nasty to each other. I bet nobody tuning in for a Mother of Tears review expected the first two other movie comparisons to be Harry Potter and Ghostbusters 2, but there you are. So yeah, very different feeling film, but like I said, it's not a bad one at all. I do think it's a little bit of a shame that the witch who in Inferno we see with the cat, who was presumably meant to be the same witch from this film, it's a shame that you can't have the same actress from that film being in this one. Obviously, she would have been way too old in 2007 to play the part. But if this had come out in 2022, I wonder if they could have used the technology to sort of put the face on the witch, just so we could have had that same character again. Another way in which this film is vastly different to the first two is in its violence. This is one of the most ultra-violent films I've seen in quite some time. I don't think of the first two as being gory necessarily. I mean, you get the occasional bloody death, like with the girl in the hotel at the beginning of Suspiria. But on the whole, I think of those two films as more creepy and atmospheric rather than violent. But Mother of Tears goes in completely the opposite direction, albeit some of the violence is diluted somewhat by some ropey CGI. But right from the start of this, I mean, the first kill, this woman in a museum, she has her innards ripped out and she's strangled with those things. I'm not sure what the medical term is for that really long coil that's in your stomach that's like a mile long. It's not going to come to me, but it's complete overkill. I've already mentioned the baby that gets thrown off the bridge. That is hard to watch. I mean, obviously it's not a real baby, but just the way that the baby's head thumps off the scaffolding on its way down, it's like, oh man. I've got to mention one more. So there's this lesbian character who gets a spear rammed through her legs, through her body. There's no narrative reason for that character to be a lesbian. Dario's literally, seemingly, just thought to himself, oh, if she was a lesbian, that would make this death really ironic, wouldn't it? I'm just kind of thinking, I'm almost ashamed for sort of finding that death amusing, and some people would absolutely not find that amusing. I think we probably just better skip forwards, but yeah, there's some really violent stuff in this film. By the time we get to the finale and the main character Sarah finds the secret hideout of the main witch, yeah, there's some gruesome stuff in the ending as well, but it's quite tame compared to all the stuff we've had to sit through leading up to that point. I'm going to come out with another movie comparison now, Event Horizon. There's lots of the followers of the main witch who all covered in blood and entrails towards the end, and they're sort of writhing against each other and stuff, and it's not really gruesome at that point, it's just really weird. Asia Argento plays Sarah. This is the first time she was back in one of these films since Phantom of the Opera, and she's definitely come on a bit as an actress, not necessarily in terms of the quality of what she's doing, but she just feels different now given where she was in her career at this point. For me, I think her voice has got a little bit heavier. I don't know if she smoked during her 20s maybe, but there's just a different inflection slightly in the way that she talks in this film. None of the other characters, apart from Sarah, make any real impression, lesbian or straight. They just come and go from the movie for the most part. I think it's telling though, and I don't want to sound like I'm on some kind of anti-gore crusade. I'm not. I'm a horror fan through and through. I don't mind a good bit of hard gore, but the best scene in this film for me is the only one that's more about the tension and the suspense rather than the violence. I refer to the scene where Sarah's being chased through the train station by some acolytes, and she starts off in like a mall and then she ends up on a train. Brilliant stuff. There's always at least one sequence in any Argento film that's sort of like this, and even when the more silly moments come along, like Sarah making herself invisible to avoid the attentions of a policeman, I was so on the edge of my seat as the policeman got right up close to her, but he didn't quite know she was there, that I could sort of put to one side the fact that on its base level, this is a little bit of a silly concept. The gore isn't the worst thing about this film, though. In fact, I wouldn't even call the gore a negative necessarily. It's just a talking point. I mean, it's so in your face when you're watching this. You can't not raise the issue when you're watching the film, but no, the worst thing about Mother of Tears, sadly, is the involvement of Dario Nicolodi. Now, it's great that her and Dario were able to reconcile enough that they could do another movie together, but the role that she's got in this is absolutely awful. I mean, I didn't think it could get much worse than the sort of part she was playing in like opera and Phenomena, but in this, I mean, wow, she plays like a ghost who's meant to be like the mother of Sarah. So basically she's Asia Argento's mother in the film and in real life, but that's just distracting. It takes me out of the story. When they're speaking to each other, I'm just thinking about them as actresses and as people rather than focusing on the characters of Mother of Tears. And the way that they show Daria's ghost character is just really bad as well. It's like, I've got to mention Ghostbusters again actually, so when you see Dario Nicolodi floating down the corridor backwards, it's like watching a white version of Slimer from Ghostbusters. It's just really cheesy and tacky, and this whole thing of having Daria being Asia's mother, it seems to bring out the worst acting in Asia that I've ever seen. When Asia's there going, "Mummy, mummy," or whatever she says, it's like, wow, you've suddenly gone from being an alright actress in the previous scenes to just being shocking in this scene. So yeah, the biggest weakness of the movie is absolutely Nicolodi's casting, which is a shame, because before watching this film, if you'd have told me, oh, Asia's going to be back for this one and Dario as well, I would have found that quite curious to see how that would play out. And as it turns out, didn't play out too well. But that's the only really bad thing about this film, to be honest. On the whole, I do enjoy this. I've seen way worse closing chapters to trilogies. I've seen better as well, but given the fact that there was 27 years between Inferno and Mother of Tears, I think there was a reasonably good job done on this. You know, it finishes things off, it gets it done. It might be a better film to watch with other people. I think because it's a little bit over the top, what you're watching this film with the gore and stuff, I could imagine you having a bit of a giggle with other people if you to put this on, whereas Suspiria and Inferno, they will always be for me solo pursuit films, films that you can just put on and just almost watch half asleep. But I couldn't imagine myself watching those films with other people necessarily, like with Mother of Tears. But I think it's a good thing ultimately that Mother of Tears is at this part of the filmography. You compare it to some of the other films from the later part of Argento's career, and I actually view this one quite favourably. But if Mother of Tears had come out after Inferno in this exact form, but looking like a 1982 film, I don't think it would look quite as good. It would be sandwiched between Inferno and Tenebrae, and reviews would be, well, I think they're quite mixed, the reviews from fans to this film, but I think they would be a lot worse if it had come out back in the early 80s. So it's time for me to show you the version of the film that I've got. Here is my DVD copy of Mother of Tears. I think there is at least one special edition Blu-ray of some sort that is available for this film, but the last time that I looked it up on eBay, it was like more than £30 to buy, and it was from abroad. I can't remember now, but I don't like the film enough to spend that kind of money on it. If it came down in price or a new version of the film came out on Blu-ray that was a bit more affordable, I might be tempted to upgrade, because I do kind of like the film. But the main thing about this DVD is the fact that it is a pretty good presentation for a DVD. It fills my entire TV screen, for one thing. I can't say the same about my Phantom of the Opera DVD, so this is fine on my shelf as far as I'm concerned. There's no real special features on it. There's a trailer and that's it. It would be really nice to eventually get something for Mother of Tears that has some commentaries and docos and things like that on, but we'll see in the future. Right, it's time to get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this film. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 bloody axes out of 5. I was kind of torn between 3 and 3.5. I've just about given this film the benefit of the doubt in the end. Just to recap, I think I gave Suspiria 5 out of 5. In fact, I'm sure I did. And Inferno, I can't remember now. It was either 4 or 4.5. So this is definitely the weakest of the 3. But thankfully, it's still a reasonably good film. It's not like a massive, massive drop-off from Inferno. But certainly those first 2 films are absolute classics for me, whereas this one is just a really enjoyable sequel, I guess. Right, I'm not sure what the next Argento film is for me to review. It's either Giallo or Dracula. I can't remember the exact chronological order, but whichever film it is, I'll be back again very, very soon. So until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.